First of all, David, why are you fighting Cambridge Analytica, and what's the data that you're trying to recover?
I'm trying to recover the 4,000 to 5,000 data points that the company claims it has on every registered voter in the United States. I requested my data under UK law back in January 2017, and in March I received some of the data. But when I consulted with legal experts and experts in the field, confirmed our suspicion that it was not a complete disclosure. So at this time, we have filed a claim in the High Court seeking full disclosure to see what a complete voter file looks like as held by the company.
Wait, you said 45,000 data points on each user. Did I get that correct?
The company claims to have 4,000 to 5,000 data points per registered voter in the United States. And when I received some data, I only received about a dozen data points. So we think there are many more data points still to disclose.
And this is part of the 45 million profiles from Facebook that Cambridge Analytica reportedly has accessed. Is that correct? And you're only talking about the American profiles, but you're saying they may have 4,000 to 5,000 data points of users from larger democracies. And when I say larger democracies, I'm saying countries like America and also India. Is that correct?
It's possible. We're trying to figure all this out. So I don't know for sure if my Facebook profile was used in the final profile that was used in the election. That would be something I might be able to ascertain if I granted full disclosure. So we don't know the relationship between the 50 million Facebook profiles that were originally harvested in an illicit manner, and we don't know the relationship between those and the final profiles that were used during the election season. But full disclosure would allow those questions to be answered, we think.
Now, David, you've been fighting this battle even before it blew up in the United Kingdom. If I'm not wrong, you've been fighting this for far longer than we know the Cambridge Analytica scandal that's playing out in the media today. And in the context of this user data that you're trying to protect, are you saying that the user data, and I'm talking about the 45 million to 50 million profiles of people on Facebook, are you saying these profiles were used for elections in democracies in countries where Cambridge Analytica was active during the political campaign, including countries like India, David?
It's possible. We cannot know unless we assert our data protection rights in the United Kingdom where our data has been processed. So I think many of us have these questions, and luckily the United Kingdom has robust data protection regulation. It has a robust regulator, which many people may know received a warrant in criminal court to raid the offices and seize the servers to certify their compliance. So it's possible that Facebook data has been harvested in a manner that people did not expect, and perhaps it would take a citizen from India to go through the process that I am going through to figure out if a similar profiling process has occurred for citizens of India. We know the company operates around the world, and it is headquartered in London. So I'm really a test case to figure out if we can get our data. And when asked by the chair of the committee in Parliament that is investigating this, the Information Commissioner said that with regards to my case, because my data was processed in the United Kingdom, the Data Protection Act applies regardless of citizenship, and the Information Commissioner has jurisdiction.
If I'm not wrong, what I can understand by what you're saying, David, is that a citizen from India or the Indian government sitting in New Delhi or Mumbai can challenge the UK courts and take Cambridge Analytica head on to declare the user profiles from India that may have been stolen. Is that correct? You're saying India can pursue this battle. If US can, India can too. Is that correct, Professor Caroll?
If I succeed, then anyone in the world can try what I have done. Yes.
So would you then say that the Indian government can actively pursue it? Is a possibility that India can pursue this battle and get details, a full disclosure from Cambridge Analytica and also possibly Facebook?
We haven't yet tested the legal principles for Facebook. We are just testing at this time Cambridge Analytica. But I would encourage a citizen from India to do what I did, which is called a subject access request. You can go to datarequests.cambridgeanalytica.org and you can apply to see if they have your data. It costs £10 and you have to supply ID verification. And if you receive a response that they do have your data, that will give you rights in the United Kingdom as far as my experience has gone. So whether or not the government can take an action, I have no view on that. I don't know the legalities there, but I do know that as an individual citizen, somebody else from another country could follow in my footsteps, especially if I succeed.
Okay, so David, so there are two parts to this battle. One battle is with Cambridge Analytica, the other is with Facebook. With Cambridge Analytica, the headline is, you're saying an Indian or the Indian government sitting in Delhi can pursue this case and ensure that we get a full disclosure, fight it via the UK laws to ensure that we get details of Indian users that may have been accessed by Cambridge Analytica. That's one. Secondly, today the Indian government has sent a notice to Facebook on details. There's a questionnaire that the Indian government has sent to Facebook this evening. So would you say that's a start?
Yes, it's a start. Both of these companies have a lot of questions that need to be answered about the conduct for the past couple of years. And there's many incentives for political operations to gather data in ways that people don't expect and profile voters in ways that we don't understand. And so the key is we need transparency in order to preserve democracy in this new technology, data-driven environment. So I'm just trying to create a pathway towards greater transparency, which I believe democracy requires as more and more data is collected about us without our knowledge or consent. So I'm not saying that data can be prevented from being collected, but I am saying that we need to assert our rights, we need to demand them, and if we succeed at transparency, I think we can protect our democracies.
One thing that we are greatly interested in here in India, David, is whether this data was used in elections in India. Now, I can tell you that there is a big controversy. That's the biggest headline here in India of whether Cambridge Analytica used this data or data that was available to them. Of course, Christopher Wiley has gone on record to say that Cambridge Analytica from the year 2003 has worked with different political parties, different elections. 2003 to 2018, there have been several elections they've been a part of, including for the Congress party, which has ruled India for the longest time since independence. It's of great interest to us. Can you tell us what you know at this point on whether this user data was used by Cambridge Analytica in elections? If yes, from which year? Which year did they access this data from Facebook? And since when do you know that it's been used in elections?
Well, we know that starting in 2014 was when the efforts to create the company and build its new data methodology. We know that in 2015, it made great progress. We know that it was very active in the United States during the primary season, and we've learned that it has been simultaneously very active in other parts around the world and even before then. Indeed, Mr. Wiley did make testimony before Parliament that mentioned specifics about India and politics in India that were troubling and distressing to hear. We also heard that the company has tried to do things in other countries. For example, it was also described during the parliamentary hearing that in Trinidad, the company tried to acquire all of the ISP data, the internet service provider data of people's internet habits, and then tried to de-anonymize that data back to voter files.
Yeah,
and this is a distressing practice.
Professor Caroll, I'm going to draw you back to India for a minute. Because we, in the course of our investigation, have found out that Cambridge Analytica worked with different companies, different names, shell companies, when they had to, in the words of Alexander Nix, routes that you can't ever trace, ghost firms that you can never establish. So can you, in the course of your investigation and your efforts to fight Cambridge Analytica, have you able to find out whether they worked under different names prior to 2014? Is that a possibility?
I can only say that it has been a challenge to figure out which companies have the data. It's been a process of chasing the data. But luckily I have an outstanding legal team in the United Kingdom that has helped me. But I would say that that's one of the first challenges, is to figure out where the data has been processed and under which companies, and how the companies connect. But generally speaking, our experience has been all roads lead back to London.
Okay. Did Cambridge Analytica work under different names prior to 2014? Can you rule that out?
No, I can't. I just know that the original company, the parent company, as it's sometimes referred to, SCL Group, has been around for 25 years, and has operated around the world. And Cambridge Analytica and the other company in Canada, Aggregate IQ, which is also part of the controversy, has developed software that's also part of the revelations. So yes, the first step is to try and trace the origin of the companies, where they're getting the data, under which jurisdictions they're attempting to process it. But like I said, the minute you prove that your data has been processed in the UK,
yes,
you have confirmation of where to go from there.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that there is a company that goes by the name of SCL India. You spoke about the bigger company, that's SCL Elections, the company with which they've been able to campaign, be a part of the campaign in different parts of the world starting to the year 2000. Every political party is now trying to dismiss, or rather distance themselves from Cambridge Analytica or SCL India. But there is a confirmation now that they were working under the mothership or the mother brand of SCL, or SCL India as it's known here.
Yep, that fits the pattern. There are many divisions and often an SCL for each country. In fact, according to Mr. Wiley, Aggregate IQ's original name was SCL Canada.
Yes.
And SCL Elections has been active in the United States. So yeah, it's a global entity from that perspective. So yes, once you figure out SCL in India, you follow the data from there.
What have you been able to gather about Cambridge Analytica and SCL's operations in India? Because there is a lot of speculation, there is a lot of fight on the different political parties, the names that may have worked with Cambridge Analytica or SCL India. In the course of your conversations and your fight, what do you know? Because Wiley's named the Congress Party as one of the clients for Cambridge Analytica. What do you know about their involvement in India?
I only know from reports that the company has tried to build its business in India among other countries around the world. I have really been focused on my own country's struggle here and my own personal citizenship concern on this. So unfortunately, I'm not the expert, but I can only give advice on how a citizen in India could potentially follow the pathway of mine. But indeed, the allegations that are being made by the whistleblowers are very, very concerning as to the very sort of the integrity of our election process. And the fairness of democracy itself. So I think the concerns are justified, and I think it's possible for us to get answers if we stay focused on the right questions to ask.
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways from this interview is, Professor Caroll, that any citizen in India is empowered to take on Cambridge Analytica using laws in the UK. That's one big takeaway. But one last question before I let you go, because this evening we here on Republic TV broke the fact that there was a Congress poster in Alexander Nix's office, which of course the Congress party has been trying to deny outrightly that they had anything to do with this dubious firm. They've called it a Photoshop job, and there's been a lot of name calling in India on this controversy. But the kind of work that Cambridge Analytica has done for different political parties, dirty campaigns, if we can call it that, because Wiley in his tweet today spoke about how SEL worked on studying castes, breaking parties, helping parties win based on castes in India. Caste is a big factor for politics and politicians in India. And if SEL helped Indian political parties do that, it tells you the story of how deep and dirty Cambridge Analytica and SEL India were willing to go.
Yes, I mean, it sounds familiar. We've had the same distancing of politicians in the United States once the reputation of the company has come into question. So that sounds like a familiar pattern. So it's interesting that is a common theme we're seeing around the world now.
Absolutely. Okay, Professor Caroll, at this point we'll let you go, but we'll be in touch with you as the story progresses. It's going to get bigger, I can assure you that. And at some point we'll touch base with you and connect on how far we've been able to proceed in this fight against Cambridge Analytica and ensuring that citizens have the last word. Professor Caroll, thank you for joining us here on Republic TV. Appreciate you joining us this late.
Thank you for having me.